In this video, I will be comparing the AMD Ryzen 7 5800X and AMD Ryzen 7 5700G, highlighting their differences, and then presenting a conclusion to assist you in determining the superior option. Both processors are robust, each possessing its own strengths and weaknesses. Let's delve into them. The Ryzen 5700G was introduced approximately 6 months after the launch of the Ryzen 7 5800X. Both processors feature 8 performance cores and 16 performance threads. The increased number enhances the processor's capability to manage multiple tasks concurrently and efficiently. The base clock frequency for both Ryzen processors is 3.8 GHz. The boost clock frequency of the Ryzen 7 5800X is 4.7 GHz, whereas that of the Ryzen 7 5700G is 4.6 GHz. With a higher boost clock frequency, the Ryzen 5800X may exhibit slightly better performance under heavy CPU loads. The L1 and L2 cache for both processors are 64 KB and 512 KB, respectively. However, the L3 cache of the Ryzen 7 5800X has 32 MB shared, whereas the Ryzen 5700G has a 16 MB L3 cache. The larger cache size of the Ryzen 7 5800X provides an advantage in scenarios where data access patterns favor smaller, faster caches, such as in some single-threaded games. Both processors support up to 128 GB of DDR4 RAM, with a maximum frequency of 3200 MHz. The Ryzen 5700G features integrated graphics with a boost frequency of 2000 MHz, whereas the Ryzen 5700X lacks integrated graphics. Consequently, for graphical tasks, the Ryzen 5700G can deliver superior performance. The Ryzen 5800X supports ECC, unlike the Ryzen 5700G. Hence, for critical systems, the Ryzen 5800X is a more suitable choice. While the Ryzen 5800X supports PCI version 4, the Ryzen 5700G only supports PCI version 3. However, the number of PCI lanes for the Ryzen 5700G is 24, whereas for the Ryzen 5800X, it is 20. The Ryzen 5800X can operate at temperatures up to 90 degrees Celsius, whereas the Ryzen 5700G can handle temperatures up to 95 degrees Celsius. The TDP of the Ryzen 7 5700G is adjustable and varies between 45 to 65 watts, whereas the Ryzen 7 5800X has a fixed TDP of 65 watts. The 105-watt TDP of the Ryzen 5800X is exclusive to the CPU, and there is no throttling attributable to integrated graphics. This characteristic can offer more consistent performance under heavy CPU loads when compared to the 5700G. In terms of pricing, the Ryzen 5800X is slightly more expensive than the Ryzen 5700G. Now, let's examine benchmark comparisons. As per Cinebench R23 and Geekbench V6, both in single-core and multi-core, the Ryzen 5800X appears to outperform the Ryzen 5700G. My recommendations are as follows. If you require the utmost performance for CPU-intensive activities such as gaming, video editing, and 3D rendering, then the Ryzen 5800X is the superior performer. The Ryzen 7 5700G is a more well-rounded CPU, delivering solid performance for everyday tasks and the capacity to handle light gaming without the need for a dedicated graphics card. Additionally, it presents a more budget-friendly option. This much for today. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Also click on bell icon to never miss any update.